Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the new Savage World Thundercats action figures from Funko. So, I've been pretty excited about the Savage World line. I've already done several videos on Funko's different offerings, but this one right here is probably the one I was most excited about being announced way back in February at New York Toy Fair. Because essentially what we're getting here are classic styled Thundercats done in the retro 5.5 inch kind of beefed up barbarian style. Meaning for the first time ever, I've got Thundercats figures that fit in with my old He-Man action figures. And as a big fan of both of these franchises, specifically He-Man, I'm pretty excited at that prospect. So let's go ahead and check out the very first wave here. I have to give a very special thanks to Funko, because full disclosure, they did provide these figures for this particular video. So the first wave gives us Slithe, Liono, Mumra, and Panthro. And they're done in that cool, classic, retro 5.5 style action figure blister card packaging. You can see it's that thinner card back there. One thing to point out, I know a lot of people pointed this out online, the Thundercats logo is the modern logo. And it would have been a lot cooler to get that retro vintage Thundercats logo straight off the old toy line. I imagine this has something to do with licensing. I'm sure Warner Brothers probably wanted to use this more modern logo, so that's probably why we've got that on the packaging here. The back of that box has a cross-sell, so it shows you all the figures in Wave 1, including the upcoming Wave 2 figures featuring Tigra, Cheetara, Monkeyan, and Jackalman, so pretty cool stuff. The other thing I want to point out that you probably already noticed, my Liono has a busted leg in the package. Now, the good news, that's not broken. It's just popped off the ball joint. Once I open this up, I should be able to pop it back on there. But this would be bad news if you're a mint on card collector. That's definitely not something we want to see. Hopefully, since these are samples, this isn't going to be like a widespread issue, and you won't be finding these on the figures when you find them in retail, but it's definitely something to look out for just in case. So let's go ahead and rip these open and get a closer look at the figures within. Alright, let's kick things off with Liono, and just real quick to show you guys, I was able to pop the leg back on the ball joint there. You just got to give it a nice firm press, just in case yours is popped off or comes off in the process, and it fits right back on there, and it's not loose. Like, it's actually really tight once you get it on there. It is just one of those things that can happen. You can pop it off the ball joint there. So hopefully you guys won't run into that issue with your carded figures when you get a hold of them, but if they are like that and you're planning to open them, it's worth noting you can easily fix them. So, this is what we've got for our Liono outside of the packaging, and I keep calling them 5.5 figures, meaning they stand around the 5.5 inch mark. Now, Liono here actually goes almost to 6 inches because of that hair. He's got that big fluffy hair, and you'll see that he actually is a bit taller than some of the other figures here as a result of that big noggin of his. The overall design is pretty cool. Now, I've mentioned the whole style here is that retro barbarian 5.5 inch figure, which means they're a bit chunkier and bulkier, much more buffed out than you would expect these characters to be in. They're also in those squat poses with the bent knees there. Articulation is very basic on these guys, with the heads only turning left and right at the neck, the shoulders moving up and down there, and then the legs being on those ball joints, so you can kind of swivel those around a bit for a little bit more movement, but that's really all you're going to get. Oh, the waist also turns left and right. No action feature though, so there's no snapback waist or anything like that. But otherwise, that is really all you're going to get with these guys. There's about one way you can stand them and pose them, but the figures themselves feel nice and solid. The quality has been really good on all of Funko's Savage World figures. I like how solid they feel. The articulation is nice and tight on these guys, and they feel really hefty. Like, these actually feel like kids could pick these up and bash these around and play with them just like the old action figures. So that is pretty cool. Paint deco is really nice on these guys as well. You can see the colors are bright and vibrant there, nice bright blues. Got that classic Liono outfit there, bright red insignia right there on the belt. And all in all, I feel like he's cleanly painted and looks really nice. The sculpt is pretty good as well, but I will say with Liono, I mentioned how tall he was, but the head itself, I don't know, the proportions are definitely goofy on these guys, and they're kind of supposed to be, but his head looks a little big. I don't know if that's just me, and maybe it's the hair that's doing it. The other guys don't really seem to have that problem as much as Liono. His head just looks a little oversized. So he comes with two accessories. Of course, we've got the Sword of Omens, You see, really nice looking there. It's just done in like a flat gray, but it does have the red Eye of Thundera right there in the center. And then we've also got the awesome little claw gauntlet there. And this is really cool because it's very much like the vintage figure from LJN where it just snaps over the wrist. But instead of being like that bright red color, it's actually like done in a brown color with the little kind of red gems there on the knuckles. You can see it fits really nicely over the left hand. And then in the right hand, we can pose the sword, and he holds onto that nice and tight. This right here is an upgrade, because if you've seen any of my other Savage World reviews from Funko, one of my complaints with the Mortal Kombat figures and even the horror figures is that all the weapons fit very loosely in the hands. That seems to have been fixed with the ThunderCats figures because Liono has a nice tight grip on the sword. He holds it at a bit of an angle instead of up and down, but at least it's a nice tight grip on there so he can be armed up and ready for battle. So next up, that's going to bring us to Panthro. I just showed you him a little bit there, so he's a little bit shorter, more on that 5.5 inch scale, but his design translates really well into this figure style. He looks really great. He's got the blue like suspender like outfit on with those spikes, which are done in like a nice metallic silver color. They're actually a little pointy too, so something you want to kind of watch out for. Not too bad. And then he's got the nice kind of shiny silver also on the wrist bracer there, as well as the little band going around his left arm there. So the paint deco is really nice. Look, you got the little bands kind of tied around his boots there with the ties on the back. I thought that was a really nice sculpted detail there, but otherwise it's the same with Liono, where he's got that big kind of oversized chunky aesthetic going on there. Articulation, of course, is the same with this guy, and all the joints are nice and tight, and he feels just as solid as Liono. He does come with his cool little claw hand nunchucks as his accessory, and these are done really nicely because the actual staff pieces themselves are nice and solid, but the chain is made of a nice flexible bendy plastic, so you can see it's gummy, so that's really good. It actually does kind of flex around. It's not too stiff, and that is also painted with that nice metallic silver. Now, here's the downside to this. You can place these in his hands, and he's got a really nice tight grip. In fact, it's a bit of a struggle to get these in his hands, but once you get him in there, he holds onto them pretty good and solid. The downside is that the pose he's in with like his big buff torso there with his arms being so spread apart, you can't reach these across to do any two-handed poses. There's no wrist swivels or anything like that, so unfortunately, you can't get any two-handed poses out of Panthro with the chucks. So that's going to bring us to Slythe, who I really like. He's got a very cool, almost animated-like appearance to him, which works very well for this guy. Still done in that Savage World style, but it really suits this character, I feel like. I think he looks really, really good. He does have the tail, which is something that differentiates him from the other guys we just looked at. That is just part of the sculpt down here, though, of the pelvis, so it is not articulated. You can't swivel this or anything. I was a little worried about that getting in the way when we stand it, but as you can see, it's a little bit shorter than the length of his legs. So it does not actually even hit the ground. Like, it is just barely above the ground when we've got him standing. And he balances very well, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. You don't have to worry about the tail getting in the way of the articulation or anything like that there. He's got one accessory in the form of this cool battle axe. You can see it's a nice long battle axe accessory. He gets a nice tight grip in his hands again, so it's not like a loose fitting accessory, which is very nice. And his articulation is the same. He's got a bit of a hunch on his back though. You can see the cool little spikes going up his back. So his head doesn't quite swivel left and right as much as it kind of cocks side to side because of the hunch in his back. But otherwise, the rest of the articulation functions exactly the same. So that brings us to our final figure in the first wave, Mum-Ra the Ever-Living. And this is easily, hands down, the best looking figure in this assortment, in my opinion. I just really feel like the hulked out Mum-Ra the Ever-Living works so well in this barbaric 5.5 inch chunky action figure style. He looks fantastic. You got the great bandages there that are kind of hanging down from his headdress and around his neck, which are all like part of the sculpt, so those are non-removable. The cape itself is also non-removable. You can see it's attached to his back, but it is made of a pliable plastic, so it's soft. It can kind of bend around there, and you can still swivel the head left and right, so the headdress piece does not get in the way of the articulation whatsoever. The colors are bright and vibrant on this guy, and he's got a lot more colors going on, I feel like, than everybody else, because he's got the big bright red Mum-Ra logo painted on his chest. He's got this nice metallic gold seen on the crown, as well as the wraps on his hands, and the little tunic piece that he's wearing around his waist, and the bracers on his shins there, but also some nice bright reds and blues, just wonderful colors. Looks fantastic and very cleanly painted. I didn't point this out with the other guys, but I like how all of their fingers have like these clawed fingers, so that works out really cool. Like, look at the nails on Mumra. I love that. Very cool, very wretched looking nails on there. And he just stands nice and solid. You can see the little tunic piece he's wearing doesn't hinder the articulation, so he can still move the legs out. In fact, it's kind of laying as it's draped over the legs while they're standing in that spread out squat position. So that's definitely the way they are intended to keep him standing. And then for his accessory, he's got his nice double-bladed sword there. Again, it's a little tight to fit in his hands. You got to kind of mess with the thumb there a little bit just to get it to fit in, but once you've got it in his hand, he does get a nice tight grip on it, so it's not a loose fitting accessory. Alright guys, it's comparison time! There is no way we can get through this video without comparing these brand new figures to the vintage Thundercats action figures from LJN. So you can really see the aesthetic differences when we stand these guys side by side. It is worth noting that these new figures are meant to be in a weird kind of chunky, smaller, bulky scale. That is the way they're supposed to look. So when you look at them standing next to the old figures, it's a bit of a mixed bag. It's funny how Panthro looks almost identical as far as his scale goes. The original Slithe has got a lot more detail with like the very scaly skin, and he's a lot more hunched over. And then both Liono and Mumra are way taller than these new versions. So it's real interesting looking at these side by side with those original action figures. And of course, I mentioned my Thundercats now being in scale with He-Man figures, so how about we stand them alongside some vintage Masters of the Universe toys, just so you can get a sense of the scale between them. So there you go, my friends, a look at the brand new Savage World Thundercats action figures from the folks over at Funko. Now, I know I'm a little biased because this particular style of action figure is my personal favorite to collect, but I think these are a lot of fun, and that's exactly what the intent was, just something fun and unique and different. I've said this in all of my Savage World videos, these are not going to be for everybody, but if it looks like something you might enjoy, I think you're really going to like them because the overall figures themselves are very nicely made. They are solid, they are painted well, they articulate very nicely as far as the basic articulation goes, and they're just a fun little batch of action figures. Once again, very special thanks to the folks at Funko for sending these over so we can get a good look at them a little early. These should be hitting stores very soon. A lot of the Savage World stuff has shown up at places like GameStop, and they're only around the $10 price point. So happy hunting, my friends. Hey guys, thank you so very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, hit that like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, my friends.